Welcome to an overview of my drum sander. In this video I'm going to give you a bit of an executive summary of the drum sander and go through the dimensions of some of the components and the design philosophy, and I hope that will give you all the information you need to build this if you want to, and you can go back to the old videos and get all the construction details from there. And I'm hoping that that will satisfy the requests I've had for plans for this drum machine. And I've been a bit reluctant to do anything like plans, partly because this is the first iteration of the design. I think it's a fairly good design. I stand by my design, but I'm sure there are little things here and there which might get tweaked as I use it and perhaps discover little things that I could have done better. But the main reason I'm not going to produce plans is because of the adjuster mechanism down here. This thing is, well, I don't know where it's from. I don't know. I'm assuming it was from a machine of some sort. I got it second hand in a tool shop, a second-hand tool shop, and I don't know what it's from, but I'm pretty sure you cannot go out and buy that off eBay. So if you want to build this drum sander, you're going to have to come up with a different style of mechanism. Or if I was producing plans, I'd have to come up with a different style of mechanism, and I'd have to build it, I'd have to modify this machine. Maybe that's something I'll do in the future, but not right now. The drum sander is a very sturdy frame that everything's attached to. The bearings, the motor, and it sits on top of a stand which contains the dust extractor, which will be connected to the dust hood that I've now removed. And the reason I chose this design, incidentally, let me see if I can just demonstrate this, the top is actually just sitting on the stand and everything can be taken off. I could, in theory, have this on a desktop. The reason I've got it like that is I just felt that I didn't want to have the motor mounted low down on the stand because of vibration concerns. This way it's nice and compact. I've got a fairly short belt and I've had no problems with vibration at all. It is very, very sturdy. I just like this idea that I've used. With the electrics, I've got this switch controlling a little extension lead that the dust extractor plugs into, so that when you switch it on, the dust extractor starts up as well. I said the dust extractor starts up as well. I think that will be the only time I'm starting this during this video. The deck is coated in 1mm stainless steel. The decision to use a stainless steel top, I think, has really proved itself. You can see how this is getting, I wouldn't say scratched, but you can see how it's sort of gently wearing. I think if that had been melamine, I think I'd be concerned about the longevity of it, to be honest. So I can definitely recommend getting yourself a piece of sheet steel. This is stainless steel. It's two thicknesses of plywood underneath, and I've actually cross-braced it for extra rigidity, and it's hinged at the back, and the back is just level with the frame. The dimensions of the deck, it's 510mm wide and it's 600mm deep front to back. Obviously we have an overhang here. While we're here, I'll just give you the dimensions of the frame. I'm having to read all this. I don't have this off heart. Right, the frame itself is made from 44mm by 95mm timber, and we have two layers on the sides. The outer dimensions, it's 610mm wide. It's 530mm deep. Remember, we have an overhang at the front. and overall it's 190 millimeters high. On top of that we have a lump of, I think this is actually birch plywood, and that's 24 millimeter ply. And then I have a shim which is 6 millimeters thick. The motor is mounted on a piece of plywood that is 18 millimeters thick underneath the frame. So what this means is there's 360 millimeters between the centres of the axles of the motor and the drum. And the belt I've used is this one. It's a 10 millimeter belt and it's 1063 millimeters long, and I think that LA means that it's the internal dimension of the belt rather than the external dimension. The top pulley is 150 millimeters in diameter. On the outer dimension, I think that might be about 130 millimeters inside diameter. The bottom pulley is 75 millimeters outer diameter, so it's half the width of the top one, but it's the inside dimensions that count, and so we haven't quite got a 2-to-1 ratio. We've got a 15-to-7 ratio, or rather 15-to-7, which means that the drum is rotating at 1,307 revs per minute, and my motor is 240 volt, 5.1 amp, 750 watt, 2800 RPM, and I believe that is what's referred to as a 1 horsepower motor. The drum is 500 millimeters wide. It's made up of discs of plywood, and you'll see in the construction videos the mechanism I've used to attach the paper with little Allen bolts and these wedges, and that seems to be working pretty well. The axle is I thought it was a 1-inch axle. I think it's probably nearer 25 millimeters, but these bearings are 1-inch bearings and they support the axle 33.5 millimeters above the base. It's important to get the axle mounted really tightly within the bearing, because there is a very small amount of play here, and because the grub screw is pressing the axle to one side of the bearing by only a fraction of a millimeter. That just meant that I had a little bit more work to do to true the drum. You'll see in the construction video that I use a block of MDF underneath with sandpaper on it to true the drum. I actually had to go through a second iteration truing the drum, because it's not good enough just to have that sandpaper touch all parts of the drum and think you've got a completely level drum. There was still a little bit of play in the drum. I think as much as 0.4 of a millimeter down at this end. What I had to do was mount my thickness caliper. I can easily take it apart and just have the one arm mounted on a block of wood and monitoring the thickness as I rotate the drum. And I realised the drum was a little bit out, and that's where there was a little bit of jittering I was getting on the early pieces. It was still sounding perfectly well, but it just wasn't touching the whole of the drum. The one side of the drum was being used a lot less than the other side of the drum, but now that drum is trued up perfectly. I have coated it in yacht varnish just to make sure it's stable, that the moisture can't get in or out. I haven't painted the deck. I haven't sealed it. It's raw wood on the underside. The stainless steel is bonded to the deck using Evo Stick contact adhesive. I did that because of thermal expansion considerations. The Evo Stick will just allow it to just move a little bit, so that between this getting frozen in the winter and getting heated in the summer, we don't have problems with it warping. As far as moisture is concerned, I've not had any problems. That this deck is still absolutely true. In the UK, I don't think moisture is such a problem because the humidity here is fairly constant all year round. We've got a very temperate climate. I think if you're in a country which where the winters are really dry and the summers are really moist, if you've got high humidity in the summer and low humidity in the winter, this may be more of a consideration. I would recommend painting this to act as a moisture barrier, but I've not experienced any problems with that so far. I wouldn't rule out me painting this at some point in the future though. With the adjuster mechanism, this device gives me 110 millimeters of travel, which means that the maximum thickness that that I can sand is 55 millimeters. This deck goes all the way up to the top, and because the drum is mounted midway in the frame, if this goes up 1.5 millimeters, then the gap, the work, if you like, goes up 0.75 of a millimeter. And the reason I mention 1.5 millimeters is that's the pitch of this thread, and there's actually a calibration on here. So I just remember that a complete turn of this is 0.75 of a millimeter. So I have very fine control over the height. I put these locking braces in because I was concerned about the rigidity of the table, whether this would move at all. In practice, that hasn't been the case. Without these tightened, it's still absolutely rock solid. I've been very pleased with how reliable this is. A lot of people have commented on how long it takes to screw this thing up. Maybe I should put some sort of winding mechanism on the bottom. I don't know, but it works, and I just have to be a bit patient when I'm winding the table up. I had some concerns raised about the possibility of kickback from this, of pushing timber in and it getting thrown back at you. There's no belt driving this through; it's purely a manual feed. So you push the wood through always from this direction, and then remove it from the back. And as such, I find it's best to work from the side here, so you've got both hands either side of it, and you can just push it through. And I've found that works perfectly well. With the dust hood in place, it's not a problem in terms of safety working here. You just push it in, and the dust sander stops your fingers going any further than they should. I managed to sand some really quite small pieces of wood. For this one, I used what is effectively a push stick, so that I could push it in right the way so that I could grab it firmly as it came out the other end. But it worked brilliantly. The dust hood's made of 9mm MDF, and it's an octagonal cross section. It's 586mm wide, and the front sits on the top of the bearing mounts, the birch plywood, and top to bottom that's 130mm deep. Front to back it's 180mm. At the back the dust hood goes down further. It's actually 154mm from the top of the hood, and that's to account for the fact that the deck slopes when it's fully up. And in fact, more by luck than judgment, the dust hood at the back sits level with the bottom of the piece of birch ply that the bearings are mounted on. But that's more of a happy accident. The legs are 47mm square timber. They're 1.30 metres, 1030mm long, top to bottom, and the front is 520mm wide, which is the internal diameter of the frame, and it's 442mm deep. And then I've put a side panel and a back panel on to help with rigidity and also maybe cut down a little bit of the noise. I've got blocks on the inside of the frame, and then those blocks just sit on the top of the legs, and it means that this whole frame can be removed, complete with motor and everything, and it just makes moving this around a little bit easier when I need to get this out of my conservatory workshop and put it into the garage workshop when I've got it up and running. I hope that serves as an overview, and I hope it fills in some of the gaps of the questions that were being asked, although I suspect this video is going to generate a whole load more questions. But I would encourage you to go and watch the construction videos, because I'm sure you'll find a lot of your answers in there. And good luck if you're going to try constructing one of these, and let me know how you get on with the adjuster mechanism, what sort of design you come up with yourself. I imagine it's going to be some sort of threaded rod thing or something, I don't know, but let me know. Keep all the comments coming, I will try to answer them all, and we'll see you in the next videos. Go subscribe, go hit like, go share, do all those things, hit that new bell button, ring the bell I think they call it. Is that the new Vogue phrase? Go ring my bell! Bye! In this video, I want to give you a sort of executive summary of the drum machine. Drum machine? Drum!